Take two. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 24th Annual SF Indie Fest. I'm Sarah Flores. I had the pleasure of programming Shorts Program 5, Stranger Than, and we are joined by a wonderful group of filmmakers who participated in this program. With us, we have, drumroll, Kevin Armstrong and Angelica Campion, who made Squirrel Mountain. We have Jason Wen with the Tram. We have Cam Russ Johnson and Stefano Panisi with Blue Bison, and Eric Colonna with Rat King. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us and our wonderful audience today to talk about your films in the program. I have to say, this is one of my favorite programs. I think that it's strange and the films are complex and beautiful and just so lovingly crafted in a way that really made me think about the state of reality in the world in which we live. And I'm just so excited to have you all here. And I think just to kick things off, I was hoping that you could go around and just talk about what inspired you to make your films. And I'm gonna just go on my magical Zoom box in order of who's here. So I'm gonna start off with Kevin and Angelica. If you could talk about Squirrel Mountain a little bit and how that came to be.
Okay, thanks. Hi. Squirrel Mountain, Iggy to the Rescue, was, our son was about, Fox, he was about 4 or 5, and I just really wanted to just do something fun to entertain him. So it was just a cardboard box on sort of kitchen table situation, and he helped me make the props and everything. And this was a little demo that we did quite some years ago. And then Kevin is Iggy Pop's guitarist. And so when Iggy saw the original demo, said, if you do another one, I'd like to do a voice. And so I just sort of sat on that for a while, didn't do anything about it, which is a bit, and then he changed, he said, no, I think I actually want to be myself in Squirrel Mountain. And so that's, then I thought, oh, okay, that's weird. And I'll come up with some cunning plan. And I don't know if any of your viewers know the lyrics to his songs, but there's a lyric in one of his songs called Hypnotizing Chickens. And so because we have knitted chickens in the film, in the story, characters, so it just a bit obvious. So that's how I, came up with the idea of Iggy to the Rescue quite quickly. And then, we just sort of did it, the same thing, kind of boxes on the kitchen table, but on a much larger scale, like, as big as the kitchen table kind of thing. So, yeah.
So you haven't said what the film is. I mean,
oh yeah, well, it's not animated, or there's a very tiny bit of animation in it, but nothing to write home about. It's mainly just moving the characters to an amazing soundtrack that Kevin's done. Lots of little songs, and it's kind of for kids, but adults, especially Iggy fans, really seem to enjoy it. So that's
there's definitely like a cross section of Iggy fans, weird kids that grow up on Paul Rubens, but it's really beautiful. I'm so glad we get to share it with the audience. So thank you for joining us. On a much more different tone, but still a bit on the surreal side and strange, Jason, would you be able to talk about Nitram?
Yeah, it was my partner, she's actually Czech, so we met in London, and her mother was almost deathly ill, in hospital for a very long time at a certain point, so she had to go back to Czech Republic with our son. So frequently I was traveling to Prague late at night, and I would end up riding the tram at 2 in.the morning, because that's, by the time I got to Prague from London on a Friday night, that's what I would take. And I was just I was just like a fly on the wall, because people would disregard me because I couldn't speak the language. So I was just observing the sort of behavior of the people on the tram, which I thought was very interesting. It was like my mind just started crafting stories around what I was observing, and that's how I got the inspiration for doing this film. it was just through, and then I, because of what I'd seen, I became motivated and I started riding the tram on purpose really late at night just to see, how what it was, just to get a sense of what it was like, and that's how I started to write the story. And then we ended up moving to Prague for 2 years, and I went to Prague Film School, and I decided I wanted to do that as my final piece, and it was going to be my final piece, and then the lockdown happened, and then so it was delayed, and there was like a very tiny window when we were able to shoot on the tram finally in the summer, when things kind of opened up and you didn't have to wear masks on the tram and that kind of thing. And so I had maybe like a month and a half where I was actually able to finally finish the film. And yeah, that's how it happened. And I wanted it all to be in Czech. I have a little bit of a feeling for, Czech and the way things are. I didn't want to be a cliche stereotype of Czech people. Luckily my partner Lenka, she helped me to, make sure the script was kind of going in the right direction in terms of depictions of people and what they say and how they say it. And I had a really good script coordinator on the film who was Czech, who speak English, and he would make sure everything was kind of on the page, and yeah, so it was like it was really, really fun, but very stressful because I was my own DOP on that project. So it was yeah, I would say interesting experience for me to doing that, but yeah, I'm quite pleased with how it ended up in the end.
Awesome, thank you so much. And Eric, do you want to talk a little bit about the genesis of Rat King?
Sure.
Rat King to be.
Yeah, so I think it kind of came out of, I made the film with friends, all close friends, so which is a blessing, and it kind of cropped up out of just conversations about I think the conversation was kind of about anxiety, looking at anxiety like as a thought experiment, just like as a specter, like a ghost, seeing how it bounces between people and grows through that process, changes, and then finds an outlet. And so we just kind of got excited about that idea and a way of looking at anxiety. And yeah, got interested in trying to find a way to do that through video. And I also just think that we're watching a lot of like Nicholas Roeg movies, like Don't Look Now and stuff like that, and just loving that and kind of wanting to try to do it, But yeah, it was really, it was mostly just, we looked at it as an experiment more than anything.
Well, it is a very strange and cool experiment, so thank you. And Cameras and Stefano, I think out of the films in this program, yours is kind of the biggest in its scope, the talent that's involved, there's a lot going on. So can you talk about kind of how your film came to be?
Yeah, for sure.
You brought all those elements together.
Yeah, so Blue Bison I wrote quite a few years ago. It's more of a dark origin, so I apologize in advance. But rape, the word rape, the act of rape was always something that felt very distant to me. It was something that, when you hear of like murder or bombings or, things like, you're like, oh, there are terrible things that happen in the world, but I don't know anyone that's been shot or stabbed or, raped or killed, and then in 1 week, I heard word that one friend of mine that I knew was actually raped by someone else that I knew years prior. And in that same week, another friend of mine was attempted to be raped at a wedding. And rape became a very real thing in my life. All of a sudden, I was like, if these happen in 1 week, how many friends do I have that had experiences that I know nothing about? And in both instances, there's nothing that I could do. So I felt it wasn't about me, but I felt very helpless because they're my friends. And I was like, I wonder if I can't do anything and the cops can't do anything or won't do anything, I wish there was someone in the middle, and who would that be? What would that look like? So I sort of started thinking about who the hero would be. And I was like, well, there wouldn't be one, it would have to be multiple, and they'd have to work together, but they'd have to be so unassuming that you would never think that it's them. And who are the most unassuming people? Teenagers. They're teenagers from the streets that no one really looks at, no one really cares about. So they're not of money, they're just from whatever city, whatever state, whatever place. No one knows who these kids are. And that's where the idea of Blue Bison came, is this group of teenagers that capture bad people, torture them, force them to redeem themselves, and then set them free. So this story sort of came from that, of what if there was a bad guy, and what constitutes a bad person. If someone that's bad is willing to forgive and apologize, does that make them a good person? Is there such thing? Are the Blue Bison, are they the good guys for forcing you to be bad, or are they the bad guys for torturing you and capturing you and forcing? So what is it? So it kind of sort of became this interesting conversation of, when you think of someone like a rapist, can they turn good? And do we care if they can? Does it matter? And that kind of thing. So yeah, and then to the talent, I really appreciate that, because the entire cast are all friends of mine and I love them all very much. I had them do a table read with me, I think a year before we shot it. And I just put a bunch of my friends that I thought would do a great job in the project. And I think they did a wonderful job. And then Stefano, my co-director here, he knew about the project for many years. And we kept trying to make it and it never got made. And then finally, I booked this show. I'm one of the actors in the show called Batwoman. And after I booked the pilot, I was like, if we don't shoot the short now, we're never going to shoot it. So thankfully we came together, we did the Kickstarter, and we got it done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a heavy film, but I think that for a lot of us, there's a wish fulfillment that happens, and sometimes we wish that we had a little bit more more vigilantism isn't the accurate thing, but more means of survival outside of the constructs of society that we are given, like where we can feel safe. And
absolutely,
I think that your film touches on some really interesting points, and it's just really beautifully crafted.
Thank you so much.
It's very strange to think that we are going into the third year of COVID as filmmakers and creators and social beings. So I was wondering if you all could talk about how the past few years has influenced you as artists, and how that kind of maybe blends in with the films that you've presented here today. And we'll just go in the same order. So Angelica and Kevin, obviously you have the difference in that you're working with a different kind of form of filmmaking. You're not necessarily reliant on having, like a cast of people together, and your film had kind of a longer gestation period. But can you talk about the past couple of years for you and how it influenced your film?
Sure. Yeah, Kevin did the soundtrack before COVID. That was done, and when he was on tour with Iggy, they did Iggy's voice for the film in a hotel room after a gig in Switzerland or something. And so that was all done, so that was fine. So obviously we were just filming to the soundtrack, moving the characters to the soundtrack, so that was okay. But we had to work within the, lockdown, unlock with the filming, because it was only just me and Chantel Duncan and Tim Nathan directing, just the three of us, in our house. So that was okay. But we did have to, like everyone, sort of work within the rules.
For those of you who haven't seen it, I suppose it's worth saying that the whole of the film takes place on a tabletop in an imagined fantasy world. So it's a world of like a little model world, which is completely homemade. Everything you see was made by Angelica and Maureen, and a couple of people who helped make some of the characters. But that's it. So it was a very self-contained thing. It just took over one room of the house, really. Yeah. And so we were able to do it in small chunks like that. But
we just tried to get it as much done as possible within the boundaries of, of not being able to mix with other people. So, but really the worst thing for us is not being able to promote it. We had to we were going to do a sort of press night at the Groucho Club and in Soho, and all sorts of other plans and everything, and all that went wrong. And it's been very difficult, as I'm sure it is for everybody. It's been really difficult to promote your film. There's only so much you can do online. I don't know, it depends what kind of person you are, but I'm the sort of person that goes out and, talks to people, and, so I don't really like promoting online. It's really not my thing, but you have to do it, don't you? And of course, during COVID, you really have to do it. And I've found that difficult, found that really hard personally, but, yeah, so.
Yeah.
And also, to be honest, so gigs have come to an end. So, touring. So being able to get Iggy to do little bits of PR, onto like we would have done, I would have seen him and said, oh, just bits of stuff for social media. That's not been possible. So
it's definitely been a strange time. I will say, however, if it wasn't for this new way of looking at how we share films together, I wouldn't be talking to you in my kitchen in LA, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're all so spread out that while it is difficult, and believe me, I've worked in movie theater since I was 18 years old, there's nothing more special than sharing cinema in a dark room. But I think that the fact that we are able to share things at a lightning speed and that we can come together in any way is really heartwarming. So a little half full cup there, but I feel you. It's been a really hard few years.
Yeah, it's the same. I'm sure everyone's been affected similarly in their own way.
Thank you so much. Jason, you spoke a little bit about the process of creating the night tram, in and out of lockdown and when you had access to your location. But if you want to talk about the COVID influence process for you.
Yeah, I think in some ways it helped me because, I was doing it under a school sort of deadline. So originally we were supposed to shoot it in March in 2020. Was it 2020? And so long, I'm confused, but it's like we were supposed to start shooting it in March, and then the lockdown happened, so all the school projects stopped. So it actually gave me more time to prepare, I would say, even though I didn't know when we would be able to shoot. It gave me more time to kind of step back and look at things and kind of redress things, because I was kind of, since we were in school, we were kind of rushing to get it done. Plus, if we had shot it in March, it was cold, and I wanted my characters. It's meant to be spring in the film, so it actually helped because we ended up shooting it in July, and it was much more agreeable weather because we were shooting all at night. I shot over 3 nights on the tram, so first night I only had about 3 or 4 hours on the tram in motion, because one bad thing about being summer is that the nights are so short in this part of the world. So I only had about 3 or 4 hours, and then on the subsequent other 2 nights we shot it at a stop for about 4 or 5 hours each night. So that's why it was quite stressful, because what I ended up doing was it gave me time to previs the whole film, which was because I'm also a computer artist, so I ended up using a program called Blender, and I just previs the whole entire film. It's like animated storyboards. I didn't want to stick to it like, this is gospel, but it helped us to be able to hit our targets when we were shooting. Since I was also doing the camera work, I was using a handheld stabilizer, which was quite tough on my arm, yeah, so I managed to do that, and then we got our window, because initially they said, the tram people said that we were going to have to wear masks and everything. So even the actors were going to have to wear masks in the tram. So we even did a rehearsal with the actors on the tram with masks, and it just wasn't going to work. And I was getting a bit nervous about that. But then, just like a week or 2 before, they said it's fine, you don't have to wear masks. And then so I got the film how I wanted it. I mean, a funny thing was like originally when I came up with the idea for the film, there was going to be a character that was going to be wearing a mask. Because when I was on a tram one point before COVID, I had seen like, which is kind of unusual to see at that time, was see a young white woman wearing a mask. You'd see Asians, that wouldn't be so odd. But before COVID, I had seen this one white woman wearing a mask, and I decided I wanted a character that was wearing a mask. But then once COVID hit, I just said I don't want anybody wearing masks at all. And I think it changed the character for the better, that she's not wearing a mask. It's a character that she's like the observer. She's like the fly in the wall, sort of the lost sort of person that's wanting to, just an observer. She just likes to travel. And, it changed her I think it changed the character for the better. And
it's interesting. Yeah. I don't know if like the concept of masks, right? Living in COVID, but not portraying a world in COVID. I think about that a lot when I'm watching TV or movies. Where I'm like, wow, they're standing really close together. Like, like the strangeness that our world is now, like how dramatically changed it is. Eric, did you shoot your film during COVID? Or, I mean, you have a pretty manageable cast and locations, so.
Yeah, the production honestly was not too affected by it. And it's interesting that I feel the idea came around prior to COVID, but it actually like seems to sync up in a lot of ways with, I think, state of mind that was created for a lot of people, and just being like locked away in a house with your loved ones, and like psychic whirlpools start to form, and you there's a lot of push and pull going on between people who are in a confined space together, so that kind of that was interesting how that ended up syncing up. But I mean, when I think about the impact of it on the process, I think more about post-production, because something that I learned doing this is just how much you learn from, like you were saying, sitting in a dark room with other people, not even just like trying to hear their reactions or something, but there's something that happens where you just see it for the first time, it feels like, and you immediately know what needs to change for some reason, just because there are other people in the room. So, and then the more people, the better. I feel like it just amplifies the experience. So throughout the process, just finding safe ways to do that, and to get people together, and to watch the thing, and to talk about the thing, and all that ended up, because we went through a period where it was like sending out links to people, collaborating, like, what do you think about this draft? What do you think about this draft? And, it was useful, but it's nothing compared to that, just like sitting next to somebody and watching it with them. And it's so weird. It's really weird to think about, and kind of interesting. It gets me really excited about like what movies are, yeah,
totally. Thank you so much. And Kim Russ and Stefano, like, obviously very large cast, probably a big crew to achieve what you did. How was that process for you? I mean, I'm sure, working kind of more in the industry, you see what more standard protocols are and stuff like that. But how is that like working with your cast and amongst all the weirdness that we've been doing? Definitely, I don't think your sound's working.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, luckily we were able to shoot the actual production in 2019, so we didn't really have any COVID issues yet. But what Eric was just talking about with the post-production is very real. We went through the same exact thing. We actually had our editing taking place in LA. Cameras was up in Vancouver shooting Batwoman. I'm based in New York, so we had to really kind of manage this remote editing situation, and sending out review links, and then having to like cross-reference all of our notes because we're not in the room, kind of talking through everything. And then I think it took us months and months before Cameras and I actually I think we were at like our fine cut or like almost close to final cut when Canvas and I actually were able to get to LA together to sit in the room and kind of really put all the bells and whistles on everything. I also work, like my day job is I'm a producer and a director for an advertising agency. So I've really been experiencing, managing and running productions during this whole COVID world. And it has been, it was challenging at first, but now there's a lot of kind of good like habits and things that we've kind of developed that I think should carry on. But, there's just, you're just putting on a production, you're so you're responsible for the entire crew and the safety of the cast and crew. And there's all these protocols that you have to adhere to and make sure that are in place. And there's little things that, like, when you're planning a production and you have COVID, as something that to worry about, like you just wouldn't even think about it first. Like, I did a shoot down in Miami and like we had to change locations multiple times a day, and we had a 70-person crew, but we could only allow 3 people in each vehicle. And so like every single piece of food has to be individually wrapped. You have to do so there's all these things that can kind of really, in a way, especially if you're an independent filmmaker and you're really, being safe and taking care of your crew, can overwhelm your production if if you're making sure that you're being, safe for everyone. But overall, big picture, I think that it's been a big learning experience. And on a personal scale, for personal projects, it kind of slowed me down in some sense, because obviously the world kind of stopped at first, but now we're kind of getting through it. But the silver lining is I think it really helps me kind of refine some of the projects that I'm working on and working towards for the future. And it's given me a chance to really been able to kind of develop the concepts more, get a couple more drafts in, really kind of reevaluate the approach and the direction of things. But yeah.
Been such a strange time. We are just about out of time, but I wanted to thank you all so much for, first off, sharing your films with us. They're incredible. I feel so lucky to get to feature them in this program. And taking the time to come and talk to our Indie Fest audience, who is enraptured by your films and so cool for sticking around. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having
Wait,
us.
what's racking about? What does the ending mean?